It's strange how fast your life can shift. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet evening, one simple moment, and suddenly, you're looking at the person you've shared your whole world with and wondering if you ever really knew them at all. That's what happened to me. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't some dramatic explosion or messy affair caught in the act. No, it was one sentence. Just one unexpected sentence from the man I built my life with. And in that moment, everything I thought I understood about love, marriage, and who I was cracked. Not loudly, not all at once, but in this soft, terrifying way, like the quiet snap of a bone beneath your skin. You can't see the break, but you feel it. And once you feel it, you can't pretend it didn't happen. You know that feeling? When the air suddenly feels heavier than usual, like you walked into a room that used to feel like home, but now something's off, and you don't know what, only that your chest tightens for no clear reason? That was me. That was our kitchen that night. Same counter. Same walls. Same man standing in front of me. But when he looked me in the eye and said those words, it was like the floor beneath me shifted, just a little. Just enough for me to realize something had been building for a while. I just hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had, but I didn't want to face it, because facing it meant asking hard questions. Like, how did we get here? When did the silence between us get so loud? When did the warmth fade from his eyes? And when did I start pretending I didn't notice? We were the kind of couple people called solid. You know the type, showed up to family events smiling, took vacation photos that looked like postcards, hosted dinner parties with matching napkins. But behind closed doors? There were no grand fights. Just absence. That empty kind of quiet that doesn't scream at you, but chips away at your spirit, little by little, night after night. I used to blame myself. Maybe I still do. Maybe that's why his request hit me so hard. Because deep down, a part of me already felt like I was failing. And maybe that's what made me listen. Really listen. When he said it, I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, trying to remember how to breathe. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't show up as a person in your bed. Sometimes it shows up in a question that changes everything. And no matter how much you love someone, no matter how long you've built a life together, you realize, in that one moment, you're standing at a crossroads you never saw coming. So, if you've ever felt that flicker of panic, that ache in your chest when love starts to twist into something unfamiliar, then maybe this story isn't just mine. Maybe it's yours too. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where real stories aren't just told, they're felt. Where we dive into the parts of love that don't make it to the surface. Because what happened next changed everything. And you won't want to miss it. My name's Elena. I'm 42. A wife. A mother of 2 teenagers. And until recently, I thought I had a normal life. Not perfect, but solid, safe, familiar. My husband, Mark, was the kind of man people trusted. He never missed a mortgage payment. He showed up to every school event. He fixed the leaky faucet without being asked twice. Dependable, predictable. But maybe that's exactly where the problem began. Predictability turned into patterns. Patterns turned into silence. And somewhere between the grocery lists and the late-night TV reruns, we stopped seeing each other. Not in the dramatic way movies show it, no shouting, no doors slamming. Just small things. He stopped holding my hand in public. He stopped noticing when I changed my hair. He stopped asking how my day was. And I stopped expecting him to. We lived in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. The kind where everyone smiles as they pass, and every house has that lived-in look of a happy family. Ours did too. From the outside, we looked just fine. You'd see us unloading groceries together, waving at neighbors, hosting backyard barbecues in the summer. But inside, I felt invisible. Like I was moving through my own home as a shadow. Making breakfast. Folding laundry. Doing everything a wife and mother is supposed to do, but never feeling like I was really there. Not to him. The kids were growing up fast. They had their own lives now. And Mark and I, we were more like business partners sharing a space. Logistics, schedules, bills, but no spark. No intimacy. No us. Our bedroom was the quietest place in the house. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. Nights felt longer. Mornings felt colder. And I started to wonder if maybe this was just what marriage eventually became. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I wanted to believe there was still something left. That maybe, with effort, we could find our way back to each other. Then came his request. We were standing in the kitchen. I was wiping down the counter. He was leaning against the fridge, arms crossed, like he'd been rehearsing something all day. And when he said it, when those words came out of his mouth, it was like the walls closed in. Everything I thought I understood about who we were shattered. I didn't answer him. I didn't scream or ask why. I just stood there, feeling the floor shift beneath me. Because that's what it felt like the life I'd built was suddenly on a fault line. And the tremor had just begun. It was after dinner. The kids had gone upstairs, probably scrolling their phones or half watching something on Netflix. Mark and I were in the kitchen, doing what we always did. Me wiping the counter. Him rinsing the plates. The kind of quiet routine that didn't need words. We were good at that, living beside each other without really touching. But then, he stopped. And I felt it before I saw it. That shift. Like the air suddenly thickened. He turned toward me. And this time, he looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. It caught me off guard. That alone felt strange. Because it had been so long since his eyes met mine with any real weight. He dried his hands on the towel. Stepped a little closer. And with this odd calmness in his voice, he said, I want to try something different. Something new. With you. And someone else. Just like that. No warning. No build-up. I remember blinking. Thinking I misheard him. So I laughed lightly, awkwardly. Because that's what you do when your brain is scrambling to make sense of something that doesn't fit. But his face didn't change. He wasn't joking. He said it again, slower this time. Like he wanted to make sure I really heard it. I've been thinking, maybe if we tried something new together, it could bring us closer. I just stared at him. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My hands were still resting on the counter, but they didn't feel like mine anymore. What was he saying? Did he want to invite another woman into our marriage? Or was he asking me to bring in another man? My mind was racing, trying to organize the chaos of what was happening. Was this a test? Was he trying to gauge my reaction to something he already planned to do? I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But the words wouldn't come. Because beneath the shock, beneath the confusion and the sudden sting of betrayal, was something else. Something I didn't want to admit. I was intrigued. And that scared me. Because what did that say about me? Did I miss being wanted so badly that even the idea of someone else in our bed didn't disgust me, but made me feel something? Did I crave intimacy so much that any attention felt like a lifeline? Or had I been so numb for so long that the idea of doing something reckless, wild, even wrong, felt more alive than the routine we were slowly dying in? I hated that part of me, the part that didn't just shut it down. The part that whispered, maybe this will wake him up. Maybe this will wake you up. Mark didn't push. He just said, think about it. And then, just like that, he turned back to the dishes. Like he'd asked me if I wanted to try a new restaurant. Like nothing had happened. But everything had. Because once something like that is said, once the suggestion is out there, you can't pretend it didn't exist. It lingers. In the room. In the silence. In every glance that follows. And, from that moment on, everything between us felt different. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, while Mark's breathing settled into that steady rhythm beside me like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just cracked open something that could never be closed the same way again. But inside my mind, it was chaos. His words kept playing on a loop. Something different. Something new. With you and someone else. Was this desperation? A cry for connection? A reckless attempt to pull us out of the numbness? Or something darker? I turned the questions over in my head like sharp stones, and every angle cut a little deeper. What kind of man asks his wife to do that? And what kind of wife doesn't say no? That was the part one couldn't escape. The part one wasn't proud of. Because I didn't shut it down. I didn't scream or cry or tell him how deeply it hurt. Instead, I thought about it. More than I should have. And that terrified me. Was I bored too? Had I missed being wanted so badly that I was willing to let someone else fill the space my husband had long abandoned? I hated that thought. But it was there. Lurking. I started watching Mark differently after that. Not just as my husband, but as someone I suddenly didn't fully trust. He stayed longer on his phone at night. Turned the screen when I walked by. Laughed at texts he never shared. Went to the gym more. Started buying cologne again, little things that didn't mean much on their own. But together, they formed a pattern. Was this really about us? Or had this idea already been planted by someone else? Was there already a third person in this conversation? I just hadn't seen them yet? I thought about confronting him. But what would I even say? Are you already cheating or just preparing to? The truth is, I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Because if there was someone else, that meant he had already moved on. And if there wasn't, then it meant he was trying to fix what we had in the only way he knew how. Even if it was twisted. But part of me wondered, had we both grown so lonely that we were willing to invite someone else in just to feel something again? I started questioning everything. The way he touched me or didn't. The way he spoke to me or avoided certain words. Even the way he smiled at strangers in public. I felt myself becoming paranoid, possessive, restless. And yet, in the middle of that, I felt something else. Longing, not just for Mark, but for connection, for desire, for passion that didn't feel scheduled or polite or tired. I hated myself for it. Because I wasn't just angry with Mark. I was angry with me. For letting things get this far. For pretending I was okay when I wasn't. For craving a fire that scared me to death. Maybe this wasn't just his sin. Maybe it was ours. A quiet, slow betrayal, not to each other, but to the people we used to be. To the version of us that laughed in bed and kissed in the kitchen. And maybe, just maybe, a part of me missed that version so much that I was willing to burn everything down to feel alive again. One night, I followed him. He said he had a work dinner. Some client from out of town. A place I'd never heard of, and a reservation time that didn't sit right with me. I waited until he left. Counted to 100 like some foolish schoolgirl. Then grabbed my keys. No plan. No destination. Just this hollow ache in my chest and a gut that refused to be ignored. He wasn't at the restaurant. I knew it before I even checked the parking lot. Something told me to keep driving. 2 blocks over, just past the old park, I saw his car. Parked. Lights off. Engine running low and quiet. He was inside. And he wasn't alone. Her. Samantha. I recognized her instantly. Even though it had been almost a year since that charity event. She worked with him. Something in marketing, I think. Polished. Charismatic. Younger. The kind of woman who knows how to tilt her head just right when she laughs, how to listen with her eyes. And in that moment, she was doing exactly that. She leaned in. Touched his arm. Laughed at something he said. And he smiled. The way he hadn't smiled at me in I don't even know how long. I didn't get out. Didn't honk or throw the door open or demand answers. I just sat there, watching from behind the wheel like a stranger, looking into someone else's life. Because that's what it felt like. Like the man in that car wasn't my husband. He was someone else. Someone who had already let go of us. And the worst part? I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes. But not surprised. Because deep down, I think I'd known. For weeks. Maybe months. I just didn't want to face it. I drove home. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just folded laundry. Like that would somehow hold the pieces of my world together. The next day, he came home with roses. Of all things roses. Soft pink, wrapped in plastic. The kind you grab last minute from the grocery store. He walked in like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't seen him with her. And he said, "Did you think about what I asked?" I looked at him. Really looked. At the man I married. At the man who was now standing in front of me, offering flowers like they could rewrite the night before. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't a question. It wasn't a suggestion, or a fantasy, or some shared exploration of something deeper. It was a shift. A transition. Something he had already decided on. With or without me. He wasn't asking for permission. He was inviting me into a choice: join him, or be left behind. And I stood there, roses in my hand, heart in my throat, and realized I was already on the outside of something I used to belong to. A week later, he told me she was coming over. Not as a surprise. Not as a secret. He said it plainly, like he was asking me what we should have for dinner. "She's just coming over to talk," he said. "It's not what you think. It's just exploration. A conversation." I should have said no. I should have screamed. I should have told him he was out of his mind. But instead, I nodded. And then I did something even worse. I cleaned the house. I vacuumed. I lit candles. I opened the windows to let in the night breeze. And then, God help me, I went to the back of my closet and found the perfume I hadn't worn in months. The one I used to save for special occasions. I sprayed it behind my ears. Looked in the mirror. And for a second, I didn't even recognize the woman staring back at me. Not because she looked bad, but because she looked lost. When Samantha arrived, she brought a bottle of red wine. No words, no hesitation. Just a smile. That kind of confident, knowing smile, like she'd already walked through this door 100 times in her mind. Mark greeted her like an old friend. Comfortable. Too comfortable. I stood there frozen, pretending to smile, pretending to welcome her, but everything inside me was clenched so tight, I thought I might crack open. We sat in the living room. Just the three of us. Drinking. Making small talk. Laughing when it was appropriate. But every word, every laugh, was dipped in tension. I kept glancing at him, watching his body language. The way he leaned in when she spoke. The way his hand lingered just a second too long when he passed her a glass. And I sat there, smiling, sipping wine, nodding at all the right moments. But I wasn't really there. It felt like I was floating just above the room, watching a scene unfold in a movie I didn't audition for. And then Mark looked at both of us. And with a calm voice, like he was reading off a menu, he said, "Let's be honest with each other tonight." Just 6 words. But they landed like a punch to the gut. Because honesty wasn't what he was after. Not really. He wanted permission. He wanted the illusion of consent. And in that moment, as those words hung in the air between us like fog, the line was crossed. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, it was already done. Something in me cracked wide open. Because I realized this wasn't about repairing anything. This wasn't about saving us. This was about escape. His, mine, hers. We were 3 people pretending this was a bold new chapter, when really, it was the end of the book. And yet, I stayed seated. I didn't leave. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Like a stranger in my own skin. But what happened next, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't about pleasure. It was about pain. A deep, soul-rattling pain that no amount of wine, no amount of pretending, could cover up. I left. In the middle of it all, before anything could happen, before any line could be crossed with no return, I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. No words. No excuses. Just gone. Mark didn't follow me. Samantha didn't call out. Neither of them moved. I don't even think they were surprised. The night air hit my face like a slap. Cold. Sharp. Real. I drove without direction. Just drove. Block after block, until the lights of the neighborhood faded, and I found myself pulling into a cheap roadside motel. The kind of place with dim parking lot bulbs and faded signs. I paid in cash. Didn't even ask for a receipt. The room smelled like bleach and old curtains. There was a Bible in the drawer, a TV bolted to the dresser, and a bed that creaked when I sat down. And there, in that ugly little room, I finally broke. I cried. Hard. The kind of cry that shakes your ribs. That curls you up into yourself, like your own body is trying to hold you together because nothing else can. I cried until my throat ached. Until there were no more tears left. Until I fell asleep still wearing the same perfume I thought might make me feel beautiful again. I woke up hours later, heart pounding, mouth dry, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. And then it all came rushing back. The look in Mark's eyes. The smell of wine. Samantha's knowing smile. The words that shattered everything. I didn't want to go home, but I didn't know where else to go. So I drove back. When I walked into the house, it was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The kids were already at school. Their backpacks gone from the hooks by the door. The cereal bowls left rinsed in the sink like it was any other day. And Mark? He was asleep on the couch, curled up like a child. His shoes still on. A blanket tossed over him halfway. He didn't even open his eyes when he heard me come in. Just said, barely above a whisper, "I understand if you hate me." But I didn't. That's the thing. I didn't hate him. I hated myself. For letting it get this far. For watching the slow unraveling and doing nothing. For not asking the hard questions when I should have. For lying to myself. For believing that silence was safer than truth. I hated the version of me that kept smiling. That kept folding laundry, cooking meals, acting like we were okay. I hated that I wore perfume that night. That I let myself entertain the fantasy, even for a second. Because deep down, I knew none of this started with Samantha. It started with distance. With walls we both built, brick by brick, year after year. And now here we were, two strangers in the same house, surrounded by memories we no longer fit into. And, for the first time in years, I didn't know what we were anymore. Husband and wife? Roommates? Or just two people trying not to drown in a sea of their own regrets? I asked myself every day, was I betrayed? Or was I complicit? He opened the door, but I didn't slam it shut. I didn't walk away the moment he cracked it open. I stood there. I stared into it. And for a moment, I wondered what it would feel like to step through. That's the part one can't forgive myself for. Not the leaving, not the silence, but the hesitation. Because that hesitation, that pause where I let the idea settle, it changed everything. Sometimes I catch him looking at me, not with anger, but with something worse. Distance. Like he's still trying to figure out if I'm the same woman he married. And the truth is, I'm not. I can't be. Not after the things I've felt. Not after the questions I've asked myself in the dark. Who am I now? A woman who almost said yes? A wife who watched her husband fall into someone else's orbit and didn't scream loud enough to stop it? Or just a tired soul who ran out of ways to pretend everything was fine? I wish I could go back to the beginning. To that version of me who still believed a shared bed meant shared hearts. Who still believed in loyalty as a language you speak with your whole body. But that woman, she's not here anymore. And I don't know when exactly she disappeared. Was it after the second missed anniversary dinner? The third unanswered text? The 100th night we went to bed back to back, cold shoulders and swallowed words between us? Maybe it wasn't just one moment. Maybe it was all of them. Stacked together like stones until the weight became too much to carry. Now, even when we sit at the same table, even when we laugh at something the kids say, I feel it. The space between us. It's not angry. It's not loud. It's just empty. And that emptiness, it echoes. It follows me into the shower, into the grocery store, into the middle of the night when I stare at the ceiling and wonder who I've become. I think what hurts the most isn't the betrayal. It isn't even the possibility that he loved someone else. It's the knowing that something in me shifted. Something cracked open. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to come back. Not to who I was. Not to who we were. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real loss. Have you ever wanted something so badly that when it was finally offered to you, you weren't sure if it was a gift or a curse? Have you ever caught yourself longing for something forbidden, not because it was wrong, but because it made you feel alive again? That's the part ones still wrestle with. Was I wrong for not saying no right away? Or was I, for the first time in years, finally honest with what I felt? Because it wasn't just about the suggestion. It wasn't about her. It was about me. It was about a part of me that had been slowly fading, a part one didn't even know was still there until the moment I was forced to look it in the eye. So tell me, was it betrayal, or just two broken people reaching for something, anything, to feel whole again? Because I've gone over it again and again. Every word, every silence, every step I didn't take, and every one I almost did. And maybe that's why I'm sharing this. Not because I have answers, but because I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt this way. So please, tell me in the comments. Have you ever crossed a line without realizing it? Have you ever tried to fix something and ended up breaking yourself in the process? And if you believe these stories matter, if you believe these truths, no matter how messy, deserve to be heard like this video. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Sometimes, the worst punishment isn't being hated. It's being seen. Seen exactly as you are, in a moment you wish had never happened. Loneliness, it doesn't come banging on your door. It creeps in quietly, slips under the threshold, wraps itself around your choices until the line between right and wrong becomes so faint you can't see it anymore. And silence? Silence is the most dangerous sound of all. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn. It just waits until you forget what connection feels like. Until you start to believe that anything is better than nothing. But the truth? Once some things are seen, they can never be unseen. Once you say yes to something you can't take back, the echoes of that decision follow you. Into your bed, into your mirror, into the quiet moments when you're most alone. So, if you're ever asked something that feels impossible, pause. Not because you don't know the answer, but because the one you give might be the one thing that changes everything.